Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we do have the final video, best champions to rank 3 per class, and today we're going to be talking about the Mystics. And the Mystic class is actually quite unique because in my opinion there is a relatively decent argument about taking any single one of these champions up. Now there are obviously like 3 or 4 champions that I think are head above others, but out of all of the classes I think Mystic is kind of hitting the more well-balanced kind of like place where, yeah, just about any champion. You want rank 3 Ebony Maw, he'll put in work. You want rank 3 Mordo, he will put in work. Rank 3 Dragonman, the same. Sorcerer Supreme, the same. So this is definitely, again, one of those, similar to Cosmic, where it's extremely based on personal preference, at the very least outside of top 3 or 4 spots. And the first champion that I'm going to mention that I did not include in the top 7 is the Destroyer. Now the thing with Destroyer, obviously he's quite new to the game, which is one, it is still yet to be seen his overall impact on the meta, how good is he going to be offensively and defensively. I think he will have quite a lot of AW potential in particular, but number one, I do think his Awakened ability is quite important, so him being quite new champion, you having or anybody having him awakened obviously is quite unlikely, similar to Serpent. And his ultimate impact is still to be measured, so I did not include him in the top 7 because of that. Outside of specifically pointing out the Destroyer, I also need to point out Mojo as well, because I do think Mojo just about made it there. I know a lot of people are, very hyped for him. And I think the tiebreaker there for most part was that you really, really want to get your Mojo duped, and it might not be as easy to accomplish as well. Because he is offensively completely different beast on duped versus duped. If my Mojo was duped, he would be rank 2 already, of course the challenge and stuff. But yeah, it is quite a big deal, especially, outside the Battlegrounds, but also in Battlegrounds, because that Fury is quite massive, and if you play Mojo right, you do need to lean into that and ramp him up as fast as you can. But even more so in questing. So the dupe is super important, and that's why he kind of just about missed it. And again, a lot of these picks will highly depend on which game modes you value most, which things you, which game modes you focus on, which mastery setups you run. Final champion to specifically point out is Wiccan. I personally really like Wiccan, but I just don't think he's better than the champions that I'm going to point out in the list here. So we're going to start off with spot number 7, and I'm giving it to Wong. And now it might be a bit of a surprise, but I do think that Wong kind of edged it out largely because of his Necropolis influence. Because now it opens a bit different door to become Valiant, especially if you haven't done the Necropolis yet, or you want 100% it. Because Wong can do a lot of fights in Necropolis extremely well, and if you do explore Act 8, and then go into Necropolis, then Wong as a rank up makes so much sense. Because he is gonna get Necropolis done just about as cheap as possible. So again, if you haven't explored Necropolis, have explored Act 8, and are planning to explore Necropolis, I think Wong does make a lot of sense. And then obviously, as a rank 3, he will still do decent in Battlegrounds on defense in general, some metas maybe on offense too. He's a very high tier Alliance War defender. And, community has kind of awoken to him. So I'm putting in Wong at number 7. For that. Number 6, I'm going to give it to Kindred. Wong does not necessarily need to be awakened, in my opinion. It does help, but, it's not an absolute must, especially for what most people use him. When it comes to Kindred, I do think, for me to recommend Kindred going to rank 3, he would need to be awakened. Absolutely, because Kindred can mess you up. Kindred's one of those defenders that's not too hard to fight against until fight goes extremely well. And then there is the final kind of critical point at the very end of the fight. So there are 2 distinctive things about Kindred. If you mess up, it's going to be very punishing. That's number 1. Number 2, there's going to be, critical point at the end where you do need to do everything perfectly. And if he's unawakened, you lose one of those 2 factors. But having him at rank 3 obviously still extends the fight, which also makes him more dangerous because half the battle against Kindred is to continuously pause his charges so he never enters his nightmare mode that starts degening you. And that's why the more I think about it, Kindred makes sense as a rank 3, because a lot of times the way we deal with Kindred is we just kind of bring in a champion, nuke him, don't make mistakes, and that's fine. Having Kindred at rank 3 would make it much, much, much harder to do so. So I'm putting him in spot number 6. And spot number 5, I'm going to give it to Wolfie. Now, I love Wolfie. Really, really do. Arguably, this is where the separation is. I do think that Wolfie is much, much better rank-up option than Kindred or any of the other champions that have talked this far. And I absolutely love this guy. I have 6-star rank 5 ascended. In some metas, he's absolutely brutal. He's half a decent defender. And he's very, very cool. Does not necessarily need to be awakened, in my opinion. It's nice to have, but it's not a must-have. And yeah, Wolfie will put in work for you. He's just a very, very solid champion. It's just that I think that champions above Werewolf in this list do absolutely deserve to be there. And Wolf has perhaps a bit more to do in the game before he gets there. And I know, some people will harp at me for ranking up Wolfie this low and say like, oh, you don't like Wolfie. No, I absolutely love him. I think he's great. I think he's amazing. I just think that the champions up here are kind of unarguable. So the top 4, I think I honestly think that Kushala is her. I have been falling in love with Kushala more and more, so I'm so happy that I duped her as a 7-star. But I had already taken her to rank 2 unduped, and yes, obviously dupe is helpful, but even unduped, she was putting in a ton of work for me. One of my favorite champions playing in the game, period, right now. And a month ago, I would have placed Wolfie, or 2 months ago, I would have placed Wolfie above her. But as it stands right now, Kushala is just brilliant. And all of her abilities, blocking the unblockable hits, making AI more aggressive, access to Soul Barb, and then tons of dot damage, and the way she gains power, all of that stuff adds together with her energy attacks, enabling her to take Korg, and her immunities being super useful too. So she's been brilliant. She really, really has for pretty much everything. And there's not much else I can say about that. If you have Kushala, rank her up. Spot number 3, Sasquatch. Sasquatch, I think, is rank worthy even unawakened because of how tanky he is. Realistically, I do think Sasquatch has lost a little bit of his defensive dominance, largely because of Science class being as strong as it is right now, and also because community kind of moving on to the new generation defenders, the Photons, the Bullseyes, the Onslaughts, the Maestros. But Sasquatch still there. And the rank 3 Sasquatch will still stall you or fudge you right up. Again, absolutely acceptable rank up, awakened or unawakened. And the biggest thing about Sasquatch is I think he's criminally underrated on offense. Honestly, I find myself using him more and more in attack, and he does great. He does a lot of random different matchups, and oftentimes matchups that you wouldn't think he will nuke or do great in, he does. And yeah, definitely. I think a very, very solid rank up option for pretty much just about anybody for just about any game mode. Obviously, with a slightly larger emphasis on defense for Landsword defense, for Balgron's defense, but also for general game. I think Sasquatch is just being absolutely disrespected offensively. Right. Spot number 2. And this is hard. And this is where I'm going to admit to being absolutely biased. I think Chavez is probably the best Mystic champion in the game right now. All things considered. She should probably be number 1. Realistically, out of all of my 7-stars, Chavez has done the most for me. I used her in Necropolis, used her in Alliance War, some seasons on offense, some seasons on defense. I use her, a ton in Balgron's. She just nukes just about everything. I use her a ton in all sorts of challenge modes, like the AW showcase or, plenty of pain fights and whatnot. Just about every single area of the game, she's been phenomenal. Realistically, she is the best Mystic rank option. Also, perfectly viable unawakened. I took mine to rank 2 unawakened, used her for a ton, had absolutely zero issues with that. And yeah, now I managed to awaken her. Obviously, it does help, but not being awakened should not stop you from ranking her up. And pretty much, yeah, just about the best 7 stars that I have, or the 7 stars that has put in the most work for me. And who is above her then? Who is above her? And again, this is a biased pick. If you are genuinely listening to this video, I think Chavez is the best option. Honestly. For me, and given that this reflects also my thoughts and my opinions on the game and my preferences, Jaggy Boy for the win. I think Juggernaut is just about one of the best offensive champions in the game. I don't think there's much doubt in it. Every single meta where Juggernaut is usable, he's in everybody's decks and he just destroys. When somebody drafts Juggernaut, you take note of that. When you're going up against Juggernaut, you kind of expect to lose unless you have like an insanely ridiculous matchup. Juggernaut just destroyed. Obviously, he has the weakness of not always being able to work. Not every meta, but for the most part, most champions do that. Except that Juggernaut, is very, very allergic to debuff metas, and we do have a fair amount of those. Realistically, I think Juggernaut should be in spot number 2 or 3 as like the most optimal rank. Practically though, you see a Juggernaut, you rank up a Juggernaut, and goddamn, I want one. This is by far my most wanted 7 star. Give me goddamn Juggernaut. How long must I suffer without one? How long must I suffer without a 7 star Juggernaut? Well, but either way, these have been my thoughts on best champions to rank up in Mystic class. Let me know what you guys think, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all been